The courtroom didn't just hold people that morning. It held a storm. Wooden benches were packed shoulder to shoulder, every creak of the floorboards amplified by the hush that settled as the cameras shifted their gaze. The smell of varnish and old paper lingered in the air, heavy as dust. Somewhere in the back row, a woman fanned herself with folded documents, her hand trembling slightly though the room wasn't hot. A young man in a baseball cap leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes glittering with the thrill of witnessing something he knew would be remembered. All that energy, all that breath, hung on the figure at the front. Judge Judith Schindlin, better known to the world as Judge Judy. Small frame, sharp eyes, black robe as severe as the lines of her face. She wasn't moving. She never moved first. And across from her, the spark that threatened to ignite everything. A woman in her mid-50s, heavy makeup set like a mask, platinum-dyed bob stiff against the stiff light of the ceiling lamps. She leaned forward, elbows planted on the table, lips curled into a smirk that wasn't just confidence. It was provocation, the kind that dares everyone else to react, the kind that says, "I've already won, and I want you to know it." A faint shuffle came from the bailiff's side, but it wasn't enough to cut through what happened next. The woman laughed. Not a small laugh, not nervous, full-bodied, sharp, cutting through the courtroom like glass shattering on tile. Some people flinched at the sound. It echoed against the high walls, carried itself deliberately long, as though each second was a dare. "Seriously?" she said at last, drawing the word out like a blade. She turned her head to the gallery, inviting them in on the joke. "This is your famous Judge Judy. You've got to be kidding me. She's just an old actress in a robe." Her painted nails tapped the wood, click, 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 punctuating the disdain. Then, turning back to Judy with a grin that bordered on cruel, she added, "And I came here today to prove it, to prove you don't matter." The silence after that laugh was not ordinary silence. It was a suspension, as though the entire courtroom inhaled and forgot to breathe again. A woman in the second row covered her mouth with her palm. Someone's phone camera, already running, shifted to capture Judy's face. The court stenographer, who had been tapping steadily, paused for the briefest second before resuming with a faint metallic click. It was the kind of silence where everyone knows something is about to happen. Judy didn't blink. She didn't flinch, didn't lift her chin or narrow her eyes. She just sat, back straight, gaze fixed on the woman across from her. A stare not of anger, but of calculation. There was nothing rushed in her response, nothing reactive. Her hand, resting beside a stack of documents, tapped once against her pen. Then her voice. Quiet, cool, carrying without needing to rise. "You laugh for 37 seconds. She allowed the words to stretch, unhurried. On the 38th, a pause, deliberate, exact. "You won't be." The gallery exhaled as if struck. A teenager in the back whispered, "Oh my God," into her phone mic. Somewhere near the front, a man gave a low whistle before being shushed instantly by a ripple of angry hisses. The bailiff's posture tightened, jaw clenching. But the woman, the one everyone was already calling Karen in their minds, she only leaned back in her chair, the smirk returning like armor. She tilted her head and folded her arms across her chest, as though Judy's words were nothing but theater. And maybe to her they were, except the room itself had shifted. You could feel it, how people were leaning closer, how phones were raised higher, how the temperature seemed to drop, though nothing physical had changed. The laughter, the challenge, the arrogance, it had done what she wanted. It made her the center of attention, but now it had also painted a target, framed her against the stillness of a woman who didn't need volume to cut through bone. The seconds ticked, not on a clock, but in the taut muscles of shoulders, in the tight grip of hands on wooden rails, in the measured strike of keys as the stenographer recorded history. And in that stillness, something unspoken passed between them. The woman who thought this was her stage. The judge, who had seen 1,000 like her, and knew exactly how long it took for arrogance to eat itself alive. The laugh was over. The 37 seconds had ended. What followed would not be noise, but consequences. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. The woman couldn't sit still. The silence after Judy's warning seemed to itch against her skin. She shifted forward, both hands flat on the table, bangles clinking in the stale air. "Enough of this," she said loudly, her words pitched for the gallery as much as the judge. "I don't owe anyone a thing. This whole circus is beneath me, and you—" She looked directly at the bench, smiling with teeth too white. "You won't even understand my records." The gallery tensed, a wave of shoulders leaning forward. Phones rose higher, tiny red dots recording. Someone whispered, "She's really doing this," and was immediately hushed. Karen yanked open her oversized bag and pulled out a thick folder. She dropped it onto the table with a crack that echoed against the wood. Papers fanned out, tabs sticking like colored bookmarks. She pushed it forward dramatically. "Everything you need," she said, stabbing a manicured finger toward the stack. "Blue is the contract, green is invoices, yellow is correspondence. It's all here, neat, organized. It speaks for itself." Her tone was smug, like a student correcting a teacher. Judy didn't move for a long moment. Then she reached, slowly, pulling the folder toward her. No words, no acknowledgement. Just a small click of her pen as she opened the first page. Karen couldn't stand the quiet. "You'll see the contract clears this up immediately. I shouldn't even be here." "Stop talking," Judy said, eyes still down. The words weren't loud, but they cut sharp enough to make the bailiff shift his weight. Karen leaned back with a mock surrender gesture, bracelets jingling. The crowd murmured. Judy turned the pages with deliberate care. Each rustle was amplified by the room's stillness. She paused on one sheet, finger pressed against a corner. The pen clicked once, then again. Finally, she spoke. "One date here does not match." The gallery reacted instantly. Gasps, a ripple of whispers, someone muffling a laugh. Phones tilted lower, trying to capture the exact page. Karen rolled her eyes. "A typo. My assistant messed it up. I marked the correction." "You'll see." Judy looked up at her for the first time since opening the folder. "This is your contract. You signed it?" "Yes," Karen shot back. "Absolutely. That day, 100%. Her voice rang with false confidence. "And I brought proof." The audience buzzed. The stenographer's keys clattered faster, recording every word. "You understand you're under oath," Judy said, still calm. Karen gave a broad smile. "I do, and I'm not afraid of the truth. Everyone can post this. Go ahead." She glanced at the phones raised like weapons. "Post every second." The bailiff straightened, ready to step in. Judy laid the page flat again, eyes fixed on the date. She didn't speak right away, letting the silence press down. Finally, "You're sure you signed it that day?" 100%, Karen repeated. She seemed to enjoy the phrase, rolling it like a slogan. "I even have photos, a planner note, a digital copy. Nothing to question." She reached back into her bag and pulled out a glossy print, slapping it down like a winning card. The image showed a desk, the contract spread across it, a red circle around the date. Alongside it, she placed a thumb drive in a cheap plastic sleeve. "Digital backup. I'm thorough, unlike this ridiculous case." The gallery hummed louder, a current running through every bench. Judy examined the photo, tilting it under the light, her eyes taking in every shadow. The corner of a stapler, the reflection of an overhead bulb, the faint watermark. She lowered it. "You said you're organized," she murmured. "Painfully," Karen said, smug. "Good. Organization makes truth easy to find." A low murmur rolled across the crowd, anticipation thick. Judy capped her pen with deliberate care, then tapped it once on the margin. "One date," she repeated. "We'll start there." The silence stretched again. Phones hovered, breath held. Even Karen's smirk trembled at the edges, though she forced it back into place. Judy turned one more page, slow, deliberate. The paper rasped against the folder. Then she lifted her eyes, fixing Karen with the kind of stare that stripped away every layer of performance. "If that date is true," she said, voice steady, "the record will sing." A pause. "And if it isn't?" She let the silence complete the sentence, heavier than words. The page lay flat on the bench, the date bold and arrogant at the top. Judy didn't rush. She let her fingertip rest on the corner as if anchoring the paper to the table. The silence stretched until even the court reporter's machine seemed to hesitate, the keys striking slower, softer. Finally, Judy spoke, her tone measured, conversational almost, but with edges sharp enough to draw blood. "You filed invoices for money received March 5th. She lifted a sheet without looking at Karen. "Deposit confirmation, same amount, same account. And here, March 6th, you thanked the sender in an email, clear as day." The gallery stirred, restless, murmurs rippling like a low current. A man in the back whispered, "So she had the money before?" The thought passed through the crowd faster than words could carry. Judy tapped the contract. "But this document," she paused, letting the words find their weight, "is dated nearly a year later, 12 months after you were already paid." The reaction broke loose. Some laughed, others gasped. Phones tilted higher, arms stretching to catch her face. Karen's face, the judge's finger on the page. Someone clapped once before being silenced by the bailiff's glare. Karen's smirk faltered but snapped back like elastic. "That's the renewal," she said quickly, her voice sharp. "Obviously, we redrafted." "Obviously," Judy repeated, flat, almost bored. "Except the renewal refers to a deliverable number that never existed. And the notary listed here?" She flicked the page, eyes scanning. "His commission expired 9 months before this date." The words hit harder than any gavel. The benches groaned under the weight of people leaning forward. The gallery wasn't just watching anymore. It was feeding, waiting for another crack. Karen swallowed, too fast, then forced a laugh. Paperwork errors. Notaries, banks, assistants. People make mistakes. Don't pretend this is criminal. It's business. Judy looked up, her expression unchanged. "No one is dead, Ms. Miller. But your timeline is." A sound ran through the crowd. Half shock, half satisfaction. The phrase landed like a verdict, though nothing had been decided. Karen opened her mouth, but the rear doors creaked open. Dozens of heads turned in unison. A man stood framed in the doorway, suit too big in the shoulders, holding a plastic evidence bag. Inside, a small black thumb drive glinted under the fluorescent light. The bailiff moved toward him at once. "Name," he said, his tone official. The man's voice carried a dry rasp. "Ethan Morey. I worked for Ms. Miller until April." Karen's chair squealed against the floor as she twisted around. "No, absolutely not. He was an intern." Ethan didn't argue. He lifted the bag higher, fingers trembling. "There's a recording," he said. "A phone call between her and the vendor. It mentions the contract. It's dated. And it proves she discussed payment after she already had the money." The benches erupted. Gasps, mutters, someone whispering, "He's got her," with awe. Phones shot higher, recording the newcomer. The bailiff took the bag with both hands, cautious, and carried it forward like it was fragile. Karen let out a brittle laugh. "Ridiculous. He fetched coffee. That's it. He doesn't know anything." "Coffee fetchers," Judy said without looking up, "hear more than most people realize." She examined the bag, eyes scanning the handwritten date and initials. Then she asked, "Chain of custody?" "I sent the file to the clerk last week," Ethan answered, his voice steadier now. "This is the original transfer. Metadata lines up with my phone log. I also kept my calendar, the meeting where she gave the instructions. It's all there." Karen snapped. "Lies, all of it. He's desperate for attention." She turned toward the audience. Who paid you? Enough, Judy said, calm, final. She passed the bag to the clerk, who slid it to the sound technician. He handled it without ceremony, slotting the drive into a port, fingers steady as he adjusted the controls. A small orange light blinked to life on the board. Judy returned to the contract, her tone cool. Ms. Miller, we now have a document with a wrong date, a notary no longer active, and a witness who claims he heard you admit as much. 3 possible explanations. She folded her hands. Only one of them would be compatible with your oath. Karen squared her shoulders, voice brittle but loud. Then play it. Play your little recording. I have nothing to hide. The hush was absolute, so sharp you could hear the scrape of a shoe against the floorboards. Someone silenced a buzzing phone. A teenager whispered, "Oh my God, it's about to happen." Ethan stood stiffly, pale but resolute, as if bracing for water too cold to swim. Judy gave the smallest nod. We'll hear the opening 30 seconds. If it's relevant, we continue. The technician's finger hovered over the keyboard. The gallery leaned forward, breath collective, every eye locked on the blinking orange light. Karen tried once more, softer this time. A plea under her arrogance. Judge, please. This is all a misunderstanding. People made mistakes under me, but Judy cut her off gently, almost kindly. Then the recording will clear you. The laughter that followed from the gallery was brief, nervous, quickly stifled when Judy's eyes swept the room. The technician pressed a key. A soft click signaled the beginning of the playback, and the courtroom, already tense, descended into a silence deeper than before. A silence where you could hear your own pulse. A silence waiting to break. The thumb drive was already seated in the machine, its black plastic body unremarkable, almost trivial, and yet every eye in the courtroom locked onto it as if it were a weapon. On the large monitor, a pale blue waveform stretched across a dark screen. The sound technician glanced at Judy, received the smallest nod, and pressed a key. For half a second there was only static, the faint hiss of captured silence. Then a voice came through, sharp, nasal, instantly recognizable. Karen's voice. She laughed on the recording, loud and careless. Of course I signed that contract after the fact. What else was I supposed to do? If I hadn't, I would have been finished. A pause, then another laugh, more biting than before. And Judy, she's clueless, just an old woman in a robe. The gallery erupted. It was no longer whispers or murmurs, but a roar of disbelief and savage delight. A man in the back clapped both hands against his thighs. Someone shouted, "Oh!" Phones rose like a forest of glowing rectangles, recording, live streaming, sending the moment into the world beyond those walls. The reaction felt less like court and more like a stadium. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Judy raised her hand. Not high, not dramatic. Just a small, deliberate gesture. It was enough. The silence that followed was suffocating, total, as though she had switched off the very oxygen in the room. Her eyes were fixed on Karen. Cold, unblinking, emptied of everything but precision. Her voice, when it came, was quiet enough that people leaned forward to hear. "You've just confirmed my suspicions," she said, "and now things become more interesting." The technician froze the playback. The monitor held the jagged image of Karen's voice, suspended mid-sentence. Judy turned a page in the folder before her. A new document, heavier paper, embossed with the faint seal of a bank. She slid it into the light, the numbers crisp, merciless. "Funds wired," she read. "Dated nearly a year before your alleged contract. Here is the receipt. Here is the acknowledgement you sent the very next day. Thank you for your prompt payment." Her finger rested briefly on the phrase, tapping once, as though underlining it for the entire room. Karen's face changed. The color drained so fast she seemed to pale beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Her lips parted, but no words came. She pressed them shut, then opened them again, a trapped fish mouthing air. The only sound from her table was the faint scrape of a bracelet as she adjusted it out of habit, its chime suddenly pathetic instead of bold. The crowd, stunned only seconds ago, found its breath again. Murmurs rolled like a wave through the benches. Someone whispered, "She's done," and another voice answered, "That's it, right there." Even the court reporter looked momentarily rattled, though her hands never slowed, keys clicking, preserving every syllable. Judy didn't stop. She drew out a second sheet. "Internal memo," she continued. "Prepared the same week the funds arrived. Allocate incoming to marketing line. Contract paperwork pending. The creation date is preserved in the metadata. No redrafting, no clerical error. Written exactly when the money came in." Karen tried. "Context," she croaked. "People mislabel things all the time. It's normal workflow." Judy looked at her, calm, almost pitying. "People do, but metadata doesn't." The reaction was immediate. A ripple of satisfaction, half gasp, half laugh, swelling and then choking itself off. Because everyone knew too much noise could break the spell of what was happening. Karen shook her head, voice rising as panic began to fracture her control. "That clip, edited. You can splice anything. This is a circus." "Perhaps," Judy replied evenly. "But the bank is not a circus. Neither are dates. Neither are ledgers. Those do not splice." The gallery hummed again, energy tightening like a coiled spring. Judy leaned forward, folding the papers with deliberate precision, stacking them neatly. Each motion was a verdict in miniature. Her voice stayed steady, each word deliberate. "Your voice on the recording says backdated. Your bank says already paid. Your mouth says typo. Which one, Ms. Miller, should I believe?" Karen blinked rapidly, as though trying to keep tears at bay, though none came. "It's not what it sounds like," she said weakly. "No," Judy answered. "It's exactly what it sounds like." A stifled laugh escaped from somewhere in the benches, quickly smothered when the bailiff turned a glare in that direction. Phone still hovered, hungry for every word. Judy's gaze swept the room, then returned to Karen with surgical sharpness. "Noise doesn't protect you anymore. Facts do." Karen sat frozen, breath shallow, her hands finally still. Judy turned her head slightly toward the bailiff. "Bring in the accountant," she said. And with that, the silence returned. Tense, heavy, waiting for the next blow. The bailiff opened the rear door, and the sound of the hinges drew every eye. A man in his late 40s walked in with a wary posture of someone who lived in ledgers, not limelight. His gray suit was pressed but slightly frayed at the cuffs. His shoes looked like they had carried him through long hours of office corridors. He held a thin briefcase as if it contained nothing more dangerous than paper, though in truth it was heavier than any weapon. "State your name for the record," Judy said. "Michael Tran," he replied, voice even, free of performance. "Certified public accountant, contracted to review Ms. Miller's financial activity during the relevant period." He placed a hand on the Bible, swore the oath without hesitation, and sat. The clerk slid a folder toward him. Tran opened it, revealing color-coded tabs, each one marking a section of the company's financial skeleton. Judy gestured toward the first exhibit. "Walk us through the transactions, Mr. Tran." Tran adjusted his glasses and spoke in the tone of someone who had explained balance sheets 100 times before. "On March 5th, funds were wired in the amount listed here." He tapped a line of figures. "The money went directly into the company's operating account, not escrow. The same day, a transfer was made into a discretionary account labeled Vendor Float. Within 24 hours, the funds were used for vendor payments, personal card charges, and a cash withdrawal." He turned a page. "This pattern repeats in subsequent months." The gallery shifted. The benches groaned with bodies leaning forward. A man whispered, "She already spent it." And someone else muttered, "Of course she did." Judy asked, "Was any portion of the money held pending execution of the contract?" "No," Tran said. His voice didn't rise or fall. No subledger shows a hold. No notes indicate contingency. Karen let out a forced laugh, brittle and jagged. Because we centralize records, he's cherry-picking. Tran didn't even look at her. These are ledger entries, he said. They don't cherry-pick, they don't have opinions. A ripple of laughter flickered through the crowd, quickly silenced by the bailiff's glare. Judy clicked her pen once, a sharp little sound that punctured the tension. "Mr. Tran," Judy said, "you prepared a summary of outflows?" "Yes." He flipped to a chart, rectangles of numbers marching across the page. "Marketing expenses, yes, but also reimbursements labeled client hospitality, on days with no client appointments, and 2 transfers to a personal account. The memo field reads bridge. Total, $86,000 from the initial deposit. The remainder was drawn down over 5 months. "And the contract?" Judy asked. Tran's face didn't change, but his eyes flicked toward Karen before returning to the page. The contract file was created nearly a year later. Metadata confirms it. The notary stamp doesn't match the date. It expired months before. And there is an email written by Ms. Miller stating, quote, "We'll finalize paperwork later to match. Nobody checks dates." He slid the printout forward. The gallery gasped, the sound swelling into something near applause before being cut off by the bailiff's warning glance. Someone whispered, "She said that in writing." Phones glowed brighter, screens angling to catch the damning page. Judy let the noise fade before asking, "Did Ms. Miller ever explain why the file showed a later date?" "Yes, she claimed her assistant lost the original. When I requested backups, she said IT had purged old files." "The logs don't support that claim." Karen's chair screeched against the floor as she bolted upright. "Because he's not our real accountant. He doesn't know the system." "Sit down," Judy said, still not raising her voice. The word had the weight of stone. Tran went on, unflinching. In a staff meeting 1 week before the backdated signature, she said, and this is corroborated by 2 others, "Just fix the date so it covers us. The judge won't look too closely." He passed forward, minutes from the meeting. The reaction this time was raw. Gasps, mutters, the sharp crack of someone slapping their own thigh. Phones rose higher, arms trembling from the need to capture every second. Judy turned her gaze back to him. "In your professional opinion, Mr. Tran, were the funds received, spent, and only afterward matched with paperwork?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "That is what the records show." "And in your presence, did Ms. Miller ever comment on this court?" He didn't look up from the page. She said, "Relax, I can outsmart a TV judge." The room broke. It wasn't one reaction, but many. Gasps, laughter, disbelief, anger. A smattering of claps started, but the bailiff's raised hand silenced them instantly. Still, the sound hung in the air like smoke. Judy capped her pen. "Thank you, Mr. Tran. You may step down, but remain available." He left the stand with the weariness of someone who had carried a heavy weight and finally set it down. Then Judy turned slowly to Karen. Her expression didn't harden or soften. It simply fixed. "Do you have anything more to say? Or is it enough?" The silence stretched. The room waited. Karen exploded. She leapt to her feet, the chair clattering behind her. Her arms flailed, jewelry jangling in frantic rhythm. "This is all lies, a conspiracy. The intern, the accountant, the clerk, they're all against me. Because I'm successful, because I don't apologize, you want to tear me down." The gallery hissed and gasped. Someone shouted, "Sit down!" Another voice laughed, sharp and mean. The bailiff stepped forward, and the noise died as quickly as it had flared. Karen wasn't finished. She pointed at the frozen waveform still glowing on the monitor. "That recording, fake, stolen, edited. This entire thing is a smear campaign. I'm the victim here. Do you hear me? I am the victim." The silence that followed was different now, dense, unforgiving. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to quiet. Judy didn't blink. She let the words hang, let them fail under their own weight. And then she spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper but clear as steel. "A victim," she said, "of your own greed. That's all." The phrase landed heavier than any gavel. The gallery stilled, absorbing it like a blow. Even Karen froze, her arms dropping, her chest heaving with short, sharp breaths. The room seemed to balance on the edge of something final. Judy turned her pen slowly between her fingers, set it down, and said quietly to the clerk, "Note the admissions. We're nearly done." And the hush that followed felt like the held breath before the last strike. The bench was a battlefield of papers now, bank transfers, invoices, memos, each one a shard of truth heavier than any weapon. Judge Judy rested both palms on the wood as if to steady the whole room. The gallery sat in a silence so deep it had its own gravity. No coughs, no shuffles, only the faint electrical hum of the lights. Judy's gaze fixed on Karen, who was rigid in her chair, eyes darting as if the walls themselves were closing in. The smirk she had carried into the courtroom was gone. What remained was something raw, fear disguised as defiance. "Clerk," Judy said quietly, "recite the admissions." The clerk's voice filled the silence with measured weight. "Funds wired before the contract was signed. Internal memo instructing allocation of money weeks before paperwork existed. Meeting minutes quoting Ms. Miller telling staff to fix the date. Audio recording in which she admits backdating and mocks this court." Each fact landed like a brick in a wall, closing around Karen. Judy nodded. "Thank you." She turned the contract in front of her so the date faced outward. It no longer looked like evidence of legitimacy, but like a scar. Judy touched the corner with her finger, then folded her hands. "Ms. Miller," she said, "stand." Karen rose reluctantly, her chair scraping back. She tried to lift her chin, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her. Rings that once flashed as weapons now rattled against the table. "This court," Judy began, her voice steady, "does not sit for theater. It does not weigh arrogance. It does not measure noise." She paused, her eyes never leaving Karen's. "It weighs proof, and proof has a weight you can no longer carry." The benches stirred, the audience breathing as one organism, waiting. Phones hovered, recording the very air between them. "The sequence is undeniable," Judy continued. "The money came. It was spent. Only afterward did you invent the paperwork. You relied on a notary's expired seal, on staff you thought too small to speak, on a laugh you believed could drown out the truth." She leaned forward slightly. "That is fraud." Karen's throat worked around a word that didn't form. She shook her head once, twice, but no sound came. "Judgment," Judy said. The single word struck like a bell. The clerk's pen scratched furiously. The bailiff straightened. The court reporter's fingers flew. "I find you liable for fraud," Judy declared. "You will return $100,000 to the plaintiff, plus court costs. Payment is due immediately." The room erupted in reaction. A gasp rolled through the benches, followed by a low roar of disbelief and release. Someone whispered, "Finally!" Another hissed, "Yes." Phones rose higher, flashes popping like distant sparks. The bailiff raised his hand, and the sound dropped, but the energy remained thick, uncontainable. Karen's face drained of color. Her lips trembled, forming the ghost of words that never made it into sound. She gripped the edge of the table as if it could anchor her, but the anchor was gone. The weight of her earlier laughter had become her undoing. Judy wasn't finished. She leaned forward, not with anger, but with finality. Her voice lowered until it was almost intimate. "Look at me." Karen did. "You chose arrogance over honesty," Judy said. "You chose to treat this courtroom like a stage for your performance, and you mocked the law itself as if it were too old to see. But the truth doesn't age, it waits. Quietly." She let the words cut through the air like glass. "And today, it found you." Karen blinked rapidly, chest heaving. For the first time all day, she was silent. Judy turned slightly toward the plaintiff's table. "The award is granted in full. Clerk, prepare the order." The scratch of a pen on paper filled the air. Dust floated in the light like fragments of time suspended. Judy looked back to Karen. "Next time," she said softly, "think before you laugh at a court. Sometimes the cost of that laugh is $100,000. The words rippled through the benches. Some people nodded, some whispered, but no one dared laugh. The lesson landed heavier than the verdict itself. Judy lifted her gavel. The wood caught the light, polished and merciless. For a moment, the room held its breath, as if bracing for impact. Then she struck once. The crack rang out, sharp and final, echoing against walls and rafters. It silenced everything. The sound lingered even after the gavel settled, leaving only the thrum of blood in ears and the collective awareness that something irreversible had just closed. Darkness,